So these are golden willows growing on in Scilly. It's not necessarily the best willow to use for lobster pots, but in Scilly it tends to be, you know, whatever grows here rather than actually the best stock. And then these will be 5, 6, 7, 8 feet tall by September, and then obviously cut every year, pollarded right back. And so within 5 years you're getting enough in this little row to make, you know, 2, 3 pots, maybe more. Within 10 years you'll be making many more pots. That's the golden willow, and it'll be growing in all sorts of different sizes. So some of it from the bigger plants will be growing like a broomstick or thicker. And then the beauty of it is when you cut it, you get all your different sizes for making a pot. So the main frames will be kind of that sort of thickness, and then the weaving will be like that. And obviously, like any willow work, the beauty of willow is that it can, you know, literally tie knots in itself. And that's got to do some bends without kind of buckling. Whereas tamarisk, there's a bit of tamarisk left here. So these tamarisk trees, there's a lot in Scilly, kind of Mediterranean, North African plant, I think, but it grows because of our mild winters here. So it'll grow as a sort of mature tree. Some of these might be well over 100 years old, but you can also pollard it like willow. So this is a tamarisk tree, just like the ones behind us, but obviously annually pollarded back, and then they're now shooting, sprouting for next year's growth. So left to its own devices, it's just going to be straggly, feathery, or split. But then these in the shelter will be sort of 4, 5 foot, 6 foot long, quite straight. And so the Scillonian withy pots are half willow, and then the bases and some of the frames are tamarisk, because it's kind of a bit more. Here's the tamarisk here. So these are rejects. That's cut a couple of months back. But the tamarisk, you see, is actually quite stiff and it's quite resistant to abrasion, but it will snap if you're trying to do a 90 degree or anything. So it does the long, slow sweeps of the base of the pot, which rub against the rocks. There was no trees. Scilly was just like Orkney or Shetland, you know, there was no trees at all. So tamarisk were among the first sheltering trees for the farms. Not that long ago, only, you know, off the top of my head, a couple 100 years ago. See, that's amazing. That's 1 year. That's nice, long, straight, pollarded tamarisk. Kind of 1 year growth. Not many lobster fishermen are starting their season up a ladder. That's all I can say. In Devon and Cornwall, you know, you would find a bit of tamarisk used in the same way, but not as common because there are other more suitable materials available. In Scilly, it's what's here and what's surviving and what's growing. I'm fishing them 100% with no plastic ropes and no plastic buoys. So all the gear is either non-polluting or as close to non-polluting as we can get. And then I fish them sail and all with no engine. So the whole operation is zero carbon or zero emissions, zero plastic fishing. Obviously small scale, micro fishery, artisan, experimental. And what we're building here is a sort of general purpose, you know, withy inkwell pot, but sort of a general purpose crab lobster pot. But it's for me, they're more lobster pots. I don't really want to catch crab, spider crab. There isn't a market for me to do that. This winter, I'm hoping to get to around 50, which should be the most I've done. I'm kind of limited by my pots are quite heavy duty, so they take about 4 or 5 hours to make, but it doesn't ever tend to be that you make a couple a day, because you're kind of sorting the materials and doing all the growing and everything else you need to fish. So making 50 in a winter's, you know, still quite a stretch for me. One of the main differences with a lot of other crafts, which I think people find interesting with this, is that you're putting in a level of skill and, you know, execution into something that is then disposable. You are throwing it in the ocean to fish, and it will only last a season. And I think most crafts that we've preserved and we teach and cherish, and people either do as either a hobby or, you know, semi-professionally or professionally, most things are to make something that will then last, to be, you know, valued and cherished and passed on. I'm using Tamarisk for this because I'm in Scilly, and that, you know, I have more access to Tamarisk than willow, but in pretty much all the pots around the southwest, even this bit would be willow. Quite, you know, it's a nice state to be in mentally. It is physically knackering, yeah, without a doubt. But then you've got the fishing to look forward to, and then you're going to be knackered. I grew up in the islands, and when I went to school on St Mary's when I was age 11, so in the early 80s, there was still an old boy on St Mary's called Brian Richards, who was still making pots every winter this way, which was quite unusual, really. And he was still making, you know, a couple of hundred every winter and fishing them. He was fishing plastic and steel gear as well, but he still fished these pots. Sort of 30 odd years ago, he very kindly took me a couple of weeks and taught me one winter how to make them. And I planted up a lot of willow on St Agnes, which didn't really survive because a lot of it was in windy areas. I didn't really have any sheltered wetland. So I planted some willow, which is the stuff you saw this morning, some of the stuff you saw this morning. Yeah. And then I made every now and again in the winter, I'd make a pot just to kind of remember how to do it. And sadly, he died some years back now, but I did remember how to do it, and I took notes and drawings. And then about 6 years ago, I just leap of faith, I thought it was worth, you know, fishing these just for lobster, but commercially. Whilst there's a few people still making them around the southwest, mainly Devon and Cornwall, there's still a few old boys make them. There's a couple of people, younger people who've now learned and are trying to preserve the skill, but they're not really fished seriously. But I'm fishing them 100% with no plastic ropes and no plastic buoys. So all the gear is either non-polluting or as close to non-polluting as we can get. The reason why I'm doing this with tongs is because you'd be thinking, well, hang on a minute, you're a fisherman, why aren't you just using your hands? The reason is because I can't wear gloves because I can't rowing gloves, and if I get my hands oily, I can't hold the paddles. So I actually have to do this when I'm fishing, which is a bit odd, because usually you just, you know, handling all this stuff, but it's not quite the same.
this is how I normally fish, obviously. And then we've got waiting, you know, I've got 20 metres left.
I definitely benefit from the, you know, I mean, what, you know, talk about wellness and everything. Definitely, I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't feel the benefits of that. Yeah. And it's, you know, it's fairly hypnotic. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm not concentrating, because I've made hundreds and hundreds of pots, but I haven't made thousands and thousands for decades. So I kind of have to concentrate. But, you know, it's a nice concentration.
Basically going to be, yeah, he's like 5 mil bigger than 7 mil almost bigger than cat.